You know what's weird? Most people don't fail because they're incapable. They fail because they can't tolerate how boring real progress feels. That's the part nobody warns you about. You imagine success feeling intense, clear, motivating, life-changing every day. But most meaningful progress feels repetitive and emotionally quiet. Wake up, do the work, repeat. Again, again, again. No dramatic transformation, no cinematic breakthrough, no constant excitement. And honestly, that reality disappoints people. Because somewhere along the way, your brain got trained to expect stimulation instead of consistency. You can see it everywhere now. People restart routines constantly, switch goals every few weeks, watch motivation videos at night, then feel emotionally empty the moment excitement disappears. Not because they're lazy, because modern life trained their nervous system to crave novelty, and discipline rarely feels novel. That realization changes a lot, because suddenly you stop asking, "Why can't I stay motivated?" and start asking, "Why do I expect growth to feel exciting all the time?" Those are very different questions. At first, this feels harmless. You tell yourself you're waiting for the right mindset, the right energy, the perfect routine, a better Monday. Meanwhile, your life slowly becomes a cycle of emotional restarting. You plan, you get inspired, you feel temporary momentum, then boredom arrives, and everything collapses. That pattern destroys more dreams than failure does, because boredom feels emotionally meaningless. Your brain interprets repetition as, "This isn't working," even when repetition is exactly what works. Wait until you realize how dangerous this becomes. People start confusing emotional intensity with progress. If something feels exciting, they think it's meaningful. If something feels repetitive, they assume it's ineffective. So they keep chasing emotional highs instead of stable systems. That's why some people spend years consuming self-improvement content without becoming different. They're addicted to inspiration, not transformation. Transformation is quieter than people expect. A person waking up early consistently for 6 months doesn't look dramatic. Someone practicing a skill daily doesn't look impressive immediately. A person slowly rebuilding discipline usually looks ordinary from the outside. But ordinary, repeated long enough, becomes extraordinary eventually. That's the strange part. Real success often looks boring while it's happening. And this is where things quietly fall apart for a lot of people, because boredom triggers discomfort. You sit down to work, and suddenly your brain wants stimulation. Check your phone, open another tab, eat something, scroll for a second, reorganize your desk. Think about starting tomorrow instead. Anything except sustained repetition. And honestly, most distractions aren't random. They're emotional escape routes. Your brain is trying to protect itself from monotony. But here's what nobody realizes. The ability to tolerate boredom is becoming a superpower. Because modern attention spans are collapsing. People need constant novelty now, constant emotional stimulation, constant dopamine. Silence feels uncomfortable. Repetition feels emotionally empty. Stillness feels wrong. That's why consistency feels harder than ever. Not because humans became weaker, because distraction became easier. You can feel this in tiny moments. You open your phone without thinking, switch apps every few minutes, struggle to focus unless something feels emotionally stimulating. Your nervous system has been conditioned around interruption, and that conditioning slowly destroys depth. Depth in focus, depth in relationships, depth in work, depth in thought. Everything becomes fragmented. That's why disciplined people often seem calm.
Not because life feels easy for them, because they stopped expecting constant emotional entertainment from progress. That changes everything. Imagine two people trying to improve their lives. One person only acts when emotionally inspired. The other continues even when the process feels repetitive and emotionally flat. Guess who changes more over time? The second person, almost always. Because repetition compounds quietly. That's the frustrating part about real growth. Results usually arrive long after the effort stopped feeling emotionally rewarding. And this creates a psychological gap most people never survive. The gap between effort and visible reward. That's where people quit. At the gym, in business, in healing, in discipline, in relationships.
And once you understand that, you start seeing success differently. It stops looking glamorous. It starts looking structured, quiet, repetitive, almost unimpressive from the outside. That realization can feel disappointing at first, because part of you still wants the dramatic version, the breakthrough moment, the overnight change, the version where clarity arrives and suddenly everything becomes easy. But real life rarely moves like that. Most people change through boring repetition. They almost quit dozens of times. That's the part social media hides. You see the result, rarely the repetition. Nobody posts the 100 quiet mornings, the emotionally flat work sessions, the nights where discipline felt mechanical instead of inspiring. But those moments matter more than the exciting ones. Because identity is built through repetition, not emotional intensity. And this is where things begin shifting internally. You stop romanticizing motivation. You stop expecting every day to feel right. Some days you'll feel focused. Other days your brain will resist everything. That's normal. Humans are emotional creatures. But disciplined people stop treating emotions like commands. That changes everything. Because now, boredom stops feeling like evidence that something is wrong. It becomes evidence that repetition is happening. And repetition is where transformation lives. You know what's strange? People often sabotage themselves the moment progress becomes stable. Because stability feels emotionally underwhelming. No chaos, no adrenaline, no dramatic struggle. So the brain starts craving stimulation again. That's why some people create unnecessary problems unconsciously. They're addicted to emotional spikes. Calm progress feels unfamiliar. And unfamiliar calmness can feel uncomfortable at first, especially if your nervous system grew used to chaos, urgency, distraction, or inconsistency. Wait until you realize how deeply this affects your future. Your life is shaped less by intense effort and more by repeated behavior. A person reading 10 pages daily changes more than someone reading 300 pages once a month. A person exercising consistently changes more than someone waiting for perfect motivation. A person writing a little every day eventually becomes a writer. Not dramatically, gradually. And gradual progress is psychologically difficult because humans crave immediate evidence. You want to feel change happening instantly. But most meaningful growth is invisible for a long time. That silence breaks people emotionally. They think, nothing's happening. Meanwhile, their identity is quietly rebuilding underneath the surface. That's why patience matters more than people realize. Not passive waiting. Sustained repetition without constant emotional reward. Honestly, that might be one of the rarest skills left now. Because modern culture trained people to expect stimulation every few seconds. Fast entertainment, fast validation, fast results, fast dopamine. Slow progress feels emotionally unnatural in comparison. But here's what nobody tells you. Fast dopamine often creates slow regret. Slow discipline often creates fast freedom later. That trade changes lives. And eventually, something subtle begins happening inside you. You stop needing every day to feel meaningful. You understand that ordinary actions, repeated consistently, become identity eventually. You stop restarting constantly. Stop chasing new systems every week. Stop waiting for a magical mindset shift. Because now you understand something deeper. Your future is being built in boring moments. The mornings nobody sees, the repeated habits, the quiet decisions, the moments where you continue even though excitement disappeared. That's where self-respect gets built too. Not through thinking differently about yourself, through evidence. Keeping promises quietly, showing up repeatedly, following through when nobody's watching. Confidence grows there, not from hype, from proof. And honestly, this realization can feel oddly relieving, because suddenly success stops feeling mysterious. You realize most people aren't failing because they lack information. They're emotionally resisting repetition. They want transformation without monotony, results without routine, change without discomfort. But meaningful lives are usually built through ordinary actions repeated long enough. That's the boring truth. And maybe that's why it works. Because most people emotionally quit before repetition has time to compound. But if you can survive the quiet phase, the emotionally flat phase, the repetitive phase, your life starts separating from people who constantly restart. Not instantly, gradually. And gradual change lasts longer. That's the beautiful part people miss. Real success rarely arrives dramatically. It arrives quietly, after hundreds of ordinary days nobody clapped for. And once you truly understand that, you stop chasing excitement all the time. You start protecting consistency instead. Because consistency may feel boring in the moment, but eventually, it builds a life that no longer feels empty. And if this felt a little too real, maybe that's the part you shouldn't ignore.